Hi, Mom. I brought the wrong person on. Hey, welcome everybody. Mom's in the back. Mom is in the green room, by the way, guys. Welcome everybody to this episode of PEPTalk, Productive Environment Podcast. Welcome, welcome. We're happy you guys are here. We're going to jump right in. So I don't know if you guys, does anybody on here that's watching, do you recognize the word or the phrase tipping point? The tipping point. If you do, enter it in the chat and let us know. Of course, we're going to talk about it in just a second, but we want to know, does anybody know what the tipping point references? So I'll give you about 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So you may have heard of Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote the book, The Tipping Point, and it's all about how little things can make a big difference. And Barbara, I think you and I read this book around the same time when it first came out, and it was just it was so fascinating because we see it in organizing in general, in the organizing industry, but now you also see it in the organizing industry for professionals, for experts, for professional organizers, productivity consultants, either existing or future, people who want to be. So what do you mean by that? And what else, whatever else you want to share about the book itself, Barbara Hemphill?
Well, first let's talk about the book itself. So the premise of the book was it tells the story of crime in New York City. And actually he wrote about the time about when I was living there. And at that point, the subways were a mess. There was graffiti all over them. And the book talks about, I think it was called the broken window theory. And so they decided that when they wanted to clean up crime, one of the first things they were going to do was repair all the broken windows. Because wherever there's a broken window, it seems as though people are not caring. It's like there's nobody paying attention. And then that would mean that drug dealers would hang out there, and then crime would hang out there. And so they began to repair those broken windows and crime. And then from that, it followed on that they cleaned up the subway graffiti and things like that. And the crime was reduced. And I remember reading that book and thinking, that's what the way clutter is, in that people think it doesn't matter that much. I mean, when people like, okay, if we repair the broken windows, crime is going to be reduced. And people are like, really? I mean, that's just doesn't make sense. But that's what happened. And it's exactly the same with clutter, because clutter is something that it's kind of insidious. You don't really, especially when you're in it yourself, you don't see it. I remember a story one time, one of my very first clients, I went to her home, and there was a wrought iron rose that was hanging over the kitchen counter, and it was really kind of dirty and yucky looking, but it had been given to her by her son, who was like 30 some years old, and it was just part of her. She didn't really see it. And one of the techniques we use is have people take pictures of their area, because when you live in that area, you don't really see it. But if you take a picture of it and then you look at the picture, you see what it is. So clutter is like that. We're in it. We don't see it. But then when we get rid of it, the feeling that happens is just amazing. And it ties in perfectly with, us saying that a productive environment is an intentional setting in which everyone can accomplish their work and enjoy their lives, and enable others to do the same. I mean, it has this rollover effect, because if I'm more productive, then you're going to be more productive, and I'm going to be more happy, and you are too. And then it just has an amazing effect. So tipping point is little things make a big difference, I guess, is really the way to think about it. And clutter is one of those seemingly little things that doesn't really matter, but in the long run matters a lot.
Yeah. And it's also, for those of you that know who Fly Lady is, if you're a Fly Lady fan, post in the chat wherever you're watching this from. But Fly Lady talks about, having a shine your sink. And that's the same concept. It's like, if you are overwhelmed with clutter in your kitchen, don't deal with all of it. Don't try to be, because then you'll walk away. You'll be like, I don't have time to deal with this. So just empty out the sink and then shine it, because when your sink is shiny, you don't want to put something else in it. So that is like the beginning of, okay, now I tackled that. Now I can do the next thing. And the same thing happens with paper. When you clear off your desk and that we try to, that's one of the things that Barbara, you always taught us to do when working with someone in their office, is to make a visual difference as quickly as possible, because that gives you hope. And also that's when we're in somebody's office, but virtually it's this, online, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, let's pull everything as neatly as you can, get rid of the obvious clutter first, the obvious trash first, but then, move things off your desk, get out some pledge, wipe it down, shine it, because that's going to make you feel better immediately. It's going to make you want to keep it that way. So, and you'll be less likely to put more clutter back down on it. So I see that very similar. That's the tipping point. That's what he was talking about with the broken window.
Well, there's another way that tipping point applies, and that is, when do people try to make a change? It's like you can live with it to a certain point, and then something will happen where, okay, I've had it. I mean,
Yep.
How many times have we gotten clients where they've struggled with clutter for years, and then there was some event that happened? The first time I experienced that was when I started the industry. One of my very first clients called me and she said, "Can you come and spend 2 or 3 days? I need to clean up my house." Because she had a new boyfriend and she had been to his house and it was immaculate, and she wanted him to come to her house, but she was embarrassed. And it was like, okay, I don't care how much this is cost. This is really important to me. So that was her tipping point.
Wow.
And other times it's not having to look a long time for something, or having a fight with someone, with your boss or your spouse or something, about not being able to find something. So there is a point at which you say, okay, I have to solve this problem. And here's the good news. This is the thing that, a lot of times people think, okay, I can't even ask for help on this because it's such a mess. I mean, I don't want anybody to see this mess. And plus, I don't know how anybody else could help me. I really need to get this organized first. And in fact, then what happens is people spend a lot of time and energy doing things that they shouldn't have done at all. It was a complete waste. So when it comes to asking for help, ask for help sooner rather than later, because you'll save yourself a lot of time in the long run. And the other thing is, people think, we've said this before. I mean, I'll keep saying it because people are always going to say, okay, how long is this going to take and how much is it going to cost? I mean, isn't that what everybody wants to know? Because we don't have time and we don't have money. So we think, oh, I can't do this. Well, the good news, and we've proven it thousands of times now, is that how long it takes is directly related to how quickly you make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And clutter is postponed decisions. The reason we have difficulty making decisions is about emotion. So trying to do that by yourself is so hard because you get all bogged down in those emotions. But if you have someone working with you side by side to help you, it's the reason that I founded this industry. I literally pay people that I have trained to come and help me.
Yeah.
Because they don't have my emotion. So that's how long is it going to take depends on how quickly you make decisions, and you will make decisions quicker if you're not doing it alone. And the other thing is, the longer you wait, the more missed opportunities you're going to have. And it's going to cost you more. It's going to cost you more in missed opportunities, and it'll probably cost you more in consulting fees because there's a bigger mess that you have to deal with. So don't wait. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets. And the other thing I think about, how many times have you seen somebody, it just happened in our neighborhood. There was somebody who moved out of their house, and the house has been, I've never been inside the house, but you can tell by the outside of the house. It's a beautiful, I mean, our neighborhood's a beautiful neighborhood, but you could tell by the way it looked on the outside that clutter was a problem. And I saw 3 trucks with trailers behind hauling the stuff out. And now you look at the house and it looks quite attractive. Well, how many times have you known somebody that was living in a house like that, and then they had to clean it up to put it on the real estate market? And I have had clients say to me, oh, if I'd have done this before, I probably wouldn't have sold the house.
That's right.
So it's like, oh, don't wait, because you're just wasting so much time. And because we implement the today's mail is tomorrow's pile, which applies to everything. It applies to your clothes closet, it applies to your junk drawer, it applies everywhere. It isn't just about mail. Because we apply that, that means that we're stopping the problem. And then you're going to get faster results. Whereas most people, the natural inclination is to go back through the old stuff and get rid of all the old stuff. And while you're getting rid of all the old stuff, the new stuff is coming in, which means you're never done. And then you think, okay, this is hopeless. And we just turn that upside down, and it's not hopeless.
That's right. That's right. I love it. So isn't it, I was just thinking, as you're talking about the tipping point of, okay, something's got to change. Something's got to change. I've got to fix this. So isn't that basically that in that form, it's just like the straw that broke the camel's back. It's like, okay, you just take it, you take it, and then something happens, something occurs. And you're right. I've had so many clients I can think of that I know exactly why they finally caught, like that they finally reached out. The very first client I ever had, I think she was the first paid client I ever had. She knew what I was doing. She knew about you. She knew about my training. She knew about everything. And she was like, oh, good for you. That sounds great. And then one day she called and she was like, I need you right now, as soon as possible. What's your first availability? No. And she had misplaced a document that actually ended up costing her a lot of money. And so she said that's when I realized that I couldn't afford not to get organized and be able to find anything that I needed when I needed it. So, and so many other stories. I know our specialists have.
So that's where we joke with the phrase, pay me now or pay me later.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Don't let it get that bad. So Barbara, so it's pretty clear now the tipping point for again, let me just clarify, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we have two types of people mainly in our community, and they are either organizers or organizees. So they're helping other people get organized, or they are the ones that want to get organized. And sometimes they're the same. Sometimes they come to us as organizees and they're like, this is amazing. This changed my life. I want to learn how to help other people do this. So then they become an organizer as well. So it's clear how the tipping point applies to the organizee. It's like, okay, the piles are too much. I can't find what I need. How does it apply to the organizer as a career, someone who is in the business of helping others get organized? How is now a tipping point? Because you and I have talked about this. You said we are at a tipping point in the organizing and productivity industry. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it started with COVID. Because when COVID came, people were forced to look at their clutter. People had to come home from offices. They had to stay in their own households. And many of them were entrepreneurs working out of their house. And there might have been one. And then in many cases, there were now two, because the spouse also had to come. So now we have two people. And in many cases, we had children coming home trying to do homework. And so suddenly the clutter was just, oh my gosh, we have so much. So that was what raised the awareness of it. And then in companies, what we're seeing is the going from paper to digital. I mean, we've done that quite a while back. That's not new. But unfortunately, I mean, when I first started working with companies, I tried to sell to companies to organize their paper files. And unfortunately, at the time I was doing that, that was right when we were beginning to think digital. And so people were thinking, oh, well, I don't have to learn this because I'm going to go digital and then it won't matter. Mm-hmm. Well, what we've learned is with digital, we just now have a bigger, faster, hidden mess. The decision making, the clutter is postponed decisions, is still the truth. So we have the issue that the people who didn't organize their paper very well, in many cases, not all, I think I think more companies have done better at organizing digital than they did with paper. But what the digital companies, the ones that have converted, have the paper that's left over, all the paper that was in file cabinets and storage units before. And now that's beginning to cost money. So the cost of storage, and interestingly, the cost of digital storage is going up too, because it used to be that digital storage was so cheap that it didn't matter, just keep everything. Well, now the cost of digital storage is going up. So I remember I worked with one company that had 400 employees, and we did a productive environment day related to clearing out their digital documents. And the IT department was getting ready to switch to a new server. So before we did our productive environment day to have the employees clean up their digital documents, we had to measure how much they were using. And we had in the 400 employees, all 400 of them spent about 3 hours just on cleaning up their digital. That's all they were doing. In those 3 hours, they were looking at email and documents and clearing it up. When they were done, the IT department said that they had deleted almost 1/2 of the files on their server. I was blown away. I mean, I knew it would make an impact, but I had no idea that it would make that kind of an impact. And then the company, of course, was thrilled, and IT department was, because their work just got cut almost.
Yeah. And what I want to point out too is we're dealing with a lot of digital clutter now and working with people, because for a long time we really focused on the paper, but as you said, now it's a bigger, faster, hidden mess. And so we're dealing more with that. And I want to share this comment from someone from MT. I want to give you some hope. MT, they said, now that I'm dealing with my email clutter disaster, I realize how it's been isolating, because I'm avoiding, hiding, making excuses for my lack of responding, late replies, or missed appointments. So first of all, I want to let you know you're not alone. Second of all, that like I said, you're not alone, and there is hope. And what I want to talk about with that briefly is that, Barbara, you mentioned about storage, like the storage capacity has increased, like at Gmail and all of the mail platforms used to be free. Hey, save as much as you want. And that was great to a point. But then we got lazy because we didn't have to make decisions, because it's always going to be there. We can always find it. But what happens is then the tasks and the important things, the actions that need to come out of that, get lost in the mix. They get lost. And that's when we get emails and phone calls saying, I've got thousands or hundreds of thousands of emails in my inbox. I don't know what to do. And so I want to just let you know there is hope. There are ways that you can rapidly get rid of them, but without just declaring email bankruptcy. That is an option. Just getting rid of everything. But it comes down to, again, same as paper, decision making. And there are ways that you can do it where you don't have to make a decision about each and every single individual email. There are processes and tools that you can use to help you make that happen faster, but it still comes down to decisions. What you don't want to do is, because AI, a lot of you guys have heard about AI, it's growing, ChatGPT, there's all kinds of really neat things. And there are AI tools that make the decision for you. That's not what we're talking about. We do not want to leave that decision up. It's like they're saying, oh, we think that this is probably trash. I mean, we don't want to give up that kind of control, right? So the decisions still are yours, but we can help you make them faster. Barbara, what were you going to say? You look like you were going to say something.
Well, one of the other principles we've taught all the time is half of any job is using the right tool.
Yeah.
And right is different for different people. So we're constantly, when someone says, what should I do? We always say, that's the wrong question. The question is, what will you do? And part of the reason, we have this training program for certified productive environment specialists. And part of why it's so exciting, like when I first started this business, I went down a pathway. I spent many thousands of dollars legal fees because I was going to franchise. I thought, oh, okay, I could, it was called Paper Tiger Institute then. I was going to franchise it. And I was in the middle of the process and realized, oh no, this is the antithesis of what I'm about. Because in a franchise, everybody does everything the same. If you go into McDonald's and you get a hamburger, you know exactly what you're going to get. That is not the way we function. We have some tools and processes, but it's about the art of organizing. And that opens up huge opportunity, career opportunities for people who do love to help other people organize. And I hear a lot, it's like, I'll hear people say, oh, I love to help other people get organized, but I can't do it myself. That's easy to understand why. It's because you don't have the other person's emotions. You can look at somebody else's stuff and say, oh, you don't need to keep that, which of course we train people. That's not what you do. People ask us, what should I do? It's like, what will you do? What I will say to clients is, if it were mine, this is what I would do. And that often, I've had people, I can't tell you how many times people say, oh, thank you. You just gave me permission to get rid of it. I mean, they're just thrilled. They just wanted permission.
That's one of the first things that I do in the digital transformation boot camp that we have. In fact, if you guys are interested in checking that out, be sure, this is for the organizer and the organizee. Go to productiveenvironment.com/webinar and sign up for our webinar. But one of the very first things that we say in that group in the boot camp is, you have permission to delete all email reminders from Productive Environment Institute. When you sign up for our webinar or our boot camp, we're emailing you reminders. We probably overdo it because our clients tend to miss those things. They miss appointments, or they miss, a lot of times because they're overwhelmed. So we make sure that we're sending reminders. You don't have to keep those, especially, keep one if the date hasn't happened yet, but all the previous reminders, Zoom reminders, all those things, you have permission to let them go. So yes, sometimes we just need permission.
I want to talk about opportunity again as it relates to this industry. There are many people who have become certified as coaches, and they're very skilled at teaching other people, but they haven't really decided yet exactly what the niche is. What's going to make me different from the tens of thousands of other coaches that there are around the world. And many of our certified productive environment specialists are people who've been trained as coaches and then realize that by becoming a certified productive environment specialist, they can really narrow what they're doing. Or in other cases, our specialists are one who had a passion for something, or a skill that they've learned, or a particular industry that they really care about. So unlike a franchise where everybody has to be cookie cutter, with our training, you become trained using all the tools that we use and the right to use our intellectual property, but it's your business. You can do with it whatever you want. The money you make is yours. And it gives you the freedom of being able to have the quality of a business and the kind of business that you want. So it's a huge opportunity. And so the combination of the clutter that exists personally and professionally now, like never before, and people who are reaching the tipping point, they're finally saying, okay, this is it. I've had it. And with all the fear that's in the world right now, one of the things we say is that being organized is about controlling what you can control so you can cope with what you can't. And over, we hear people who go through our programs talk about how much better they feel, how they sleep better at night. They're having fewer arguments with family members and all kinds of things like that. So if you are someone who likes to help people and are looking for a way to add value in the world and to reduce the angst that's in the world right now, it's a huge opportunity. So we would love to talk to you about becoming one of our team.
Yeah. And as New Path Productivity, you see her on all our podcasts. Thank you, Kathy. She is actually one of our certified productive environment specialists. She said, I love the variety of backgrounds across the CPES community. And that, again, is certified productive environment specialist. And I want to just bring up MT's comment again, because if you're reading this, if you're someone who is a coach or an organizing consultant and you're reading this, I want you to see, isolating, avoiding, hiding, making excuses, late replies, missed appointments. if your heart tugs with that and it's like, I can help that person. I don't know if MT is a male or a female, so I don't want to say him or her, but I can help MT. I can help people. Then if you're like, oh my gosh, like Barbara said, they didn't have my mother. You learned a lot of these things now, growing up with your family. But if that's you, if you're like, I know how I can give somebody hope, that is dealing with those things, then you may be a candidate for our certification program. So just check. It's a 40-minute webinar. It's Barbara and I. It's not live. But so it's a bit, about 40 minutes, but it gives you kind of the overview. And if you watch that, and it will either resonate with you or it won't. It's just like, hey, this is something I can do. This is something I want to do. I want to help people this way. Or you'll be like, not really for me. So you'll know after 40 minutes whether it's for you or not. And then if it is, then you can reach out and schedule a call, and we can tell you what to do next. Barbara?
Well, I feel so blessed because I've been in this industry over 40 years and I love it more. My passion for it continues to grow because God didn't create any two people together the same or any two organizations the same. And things are constantly changing. I personally take a client now and then, not very many. And somebody asked me the other day, why do you take clients? I said, well, because I have to, because the world changes so quickly that it's really important that I periodically go into the workplace and see what is going on. I just took a course recently on how to work with 5 different generations, talking about the different generations that are in the workplace now, how they make decisions differently and how they want things differently. So I'm constantly learning. And in our CPS community, we have people from all walks of life. We have some people who were stay-at-home moms and they've been running the business of life for their families for a long time and realized, oh my gosh, this can be a really career. I can make money. And we've had other people who have been in an industry working as an employee and very frustrated, especially in the corporate world, were very frustrated because they saw systems that weren't working and they wanted to change them, but they didn't have any power to change them. Now they can come out, become a specialist, and then go back into that same environment, but with a whole new sense of power and not having to deal with the politics of the corporate world and all that kind of stuff. So it's a huge, entrepreneurship is so amazing because you really can accomplish your work and enjoy your life, and you can customize what you're doing to work with the kind of people you want to. We are like a family. We support each other very much. We sometimes work more than one consultant will work with the same person because different ones have different skills. So it is a huge opportunity for a career and actually for results in clearing the clutter in your life. So we're glad you listened today. We hope you'll join us again and reach out if you have any questions about clutter, because it's time to rid the world of clutter.
That's right. Thank you, Barbara. Thanks everybody for joining us. See you next time.